The boy in the stranger's night was cold, darker than usual. With rain falling in heavy drops that hit the cracked pavement, the streets were nearly empty, except for a young boy named Malik, who carried a torn backpack over his shoulder. He was only 12 years old, but his eyes carried the weight of someone much older. Life had not been kind to him. Malik's family once had a small home, filled with laughter and warmth, but everything changed when his father lost his job. The company where he worked closed suddenly and the family was left with nothing. Malik remembered the nights his mother cried quietly, trying to hide her tears from him and his little sister. The bills piled up, the house was taken away. Soon they were forced into a rundown shelter. Malik hated the shelter, not because of its broken walls, but because of the shame he felt when people looked at him with pity. He wanted to be strong, to help his mother, but he was just a boy. On this rainy night, Malik walked home from a part-time job he had found cleaning tables at a diner. He earned a few coins every evening, enough to buy bread or milk for his sister. He was tired, his shoes soaked with water, when he suddenly heard something unusual. A car screeched around the corner, its tires skidding across the wet street. The headlights cut through the darkness, and Malik saw a man stumbling backward, about to be struck. Without thinking, Malik dropped his bag and ran forward. His small body collided with the stranger, pushing him out of the path of the speeding car. The vehicle roared past, splashing water onto them both before disappearing. Into the night, the man lay on the ground, breathing heavily, stunned by what had just happened. Malik, shivering and soaked, looked down at him. "Are you okay, sir?" he asked with genuine concern. The man blinked, his chest rising and falling as he caught his breath. His face came into the light and Malik froze. He had seen that face before on television, in newspapers, on billboards. It was Keanu Reeves. His heart pounded. He had just saved one of the most famous men in the world, a billionaire whose movies and businesses were known everywhere. Keanu sat up slowly, brushing the rain from his hair, his eyes deep with shock and gratitude, fixed on the boy. You saved me," he said softly, his voice unsteady. Malik shrugged, embarrassed. "I just pushed you out of the way. Anyone would have done it." Keanu shook his head, staring at him. "No, not everyone would risk their life for a stranger." "You did." The boy tried to smile, but inside his chest, his emotions tangled. Because there was something Keanu didn't, Nomalek's father had once worked for one of Keanu's companies, the very company that had shut down, leaving his family broken. To Malik, this man was both a hero and the reason his world had fallen apart, yet tonight, fate had forced their lives together as rain poured down. Keanu stood and placed a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. "Tell me your name," he asked. Malik hesitated. "It's Malik, sir." Keanu nodded, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Malik, you just changed my life." The boy didn't understand what he meant. He only knew one thing. This was not the end. This was the beginning of something he could never have imagined. Because sometimes, the smallest act of courage opens the door to the greatest stories. And Malik's story with Keanu was only just starting. Asterisk. 2 worlds calleth rain had slowed. But the streets still glistened under the dim lights as Malik and Keanu stood facing each other. Keanu, still shaken by the near accident, looked down at the boy with a mix of awe and disbelief. "I owe you my life," he said softly. Malik shook his head quickly. "No, sir, you don't owe me anything. Just did what anyone should do." His voice carried humility, but deep inside, a storm of feelings raged. There he was, standing in front of the very man connected to the pain his family carried. Keanu noticed the hesitation in Malik's eyes. He knelt slightly, bringing himself closer to the boy's height. "Malik, I mean this, thank you. But I don't want to just say the words. I want to know you." Malik's body stiffened. He had dreamed of moments like this, meeting someone powerful, someone who could change everything. Yet his pride held him back. "There's nothing to know, sir. I'm just a kid trying to get home." Keanu's gaze softened. He saw the torn backpack, the wet clothes clinging to Malik's thin frame, the shoes with holes that let water in. This was not the life a child should live. "Where's your home?" Keanu asked carefully. Malik hesitated. Shame burned his chest. Finally, he whispered, "A shelter." My mom, my sister, and me. We stay there now. Keanu's heart tightened. He had walked through many shelters before, giving donations, shaking hands with children, but this boy standing in front of him was different. This boy had risked his life for him without hesitation. "Can I walk with you?" Keanu asked gently. Malik's eyes widened. "You? Walk with me?" "Why?" Keanu smiled faintly. "Because tonight you saved me, and now I want to make sure you get home safe." The boy didn't know how to respond. Part of him wanted to refuse, to keep his distance. Another part longed to say yes, because deep down, he had always carried the quiet hope that someone would finally see him not as a poor boy, not as a burden, but as a human being. They walked together through the wet streets. Malik spoke little, his small footsteps echoing beside Keanu's calm stride. But Keanu asked gentle questions, not out of pity, but out of genuine care. "What do you like to do? You have a favorite subject at school? What's your sister's name?" Malik answered in short sentences at first, but slowly his words grew. He spoke about how he loved drawing, but no longer had pencils. He spoke about his sister Amara, who dreamed of becoming a doctor. He spoke about his mother, who worked 2 jobs but still cried when she thought he wasn't looking. Keanu listened with full attention, never interrupting, never rushing. When they finally reached the shelter, Malik stopped at the door. "Is it?" he said quietly. Embarrassed by the peeling paint and the broken steps, Keanu looked at the building, then back at Malik. "Thank you for letting me walk with you," he said gently. "Can I meet your family?" Malik froze. Instinct was to say no. He didn't want anyone, especially Keanu Reeves, to see how far they had fallen. But then he thought of his mother's tired eyes and his sister's hopeful smile. Maybe, just maybe, this meeting could change something. He nodded slowly. "Okay." Inside the shelter, his mother looked up in shock as Malik entered with a tall stranger by his side. "Malik, who is this?" Malik swallowed hard, his voice trembling. "Mama, this is Keanu Reeves. I saved him tonight." His mother's eyes widened, disbelief flooding her face. Keanu stepped forward with respect, lowering his voice. "Ma'am, your son is brave. He saved my life tonight. I owe him more than words." Silence filled the small room, heavy with unspoken pain and hidden history, because what Keanu didn't know yet was that this was not their first connection. His world and theirs had collided long before this night when Malik's father lost everything, because of decisions tied to Keanu's empire, and now fate had brought them face to face. The truth between them's room inside the shelter was small, lit by a single dim bulb that flickered slightly. The walls were cracked, the floor uneven, but it was clean. Malik's mother, Alina, stood frozen, staring at the tall man who had just entered with her son. Her tired eyes, once bright with hope, now carried years of struggle. Keanu lowered his head respectfully. "Thank you for letting me step inside," he said softly. "Your son is brave beyond his years, saved my life tonight." Alina looked at Malik, then back at Keanu, her expression caught between shock and something deeper, bitterness. She folded her arms, her voice trembling. "Life has a strange way of working, doesn't it?" Keanu frowned gently, sensing weight in her words. "What do you mean?" Malik shifted uncomfortably. He knew this moment was coming, though he had hoped to avoid it. Alina took a deep breath, her eyes wet but sharp. "My husband, Malik's father, worked for one of your companies years ago. When it shut down, we lost everything. No warning, no help. He gave that job his whole life. Then one day it was gone. We lost our home, our future, and eventually I lost him too. He couldn't carry the weight anymore." Keanu's chest tightened. Her words cut deep, sharper than any blade. He remembered those days years ago when one of his business partners had closed down a branch suddenly, chasing profit over people. Keanu had trusted others to handle decisions while he was consumed with filming and charity work. But he had never seen the human faces of those decisions. "Until now," he whispered, almost to himself, "I didn't know. I should have known." Elena's eyes glistened with anger and sorrow. "You didn't know, but we paid the price. My children paid the price." The room fell into silence. The only sound, the faint drip of rain outside the shelter windows. Malik clenched his fists, torn between the gratitude he felt for saving Keanu and the pain of knowing this man was tied to his family's ruin. Finally, Keanu lifted his eyes, his voice steady but heavy. I cannot undo what has been done, but I can promise you this eye will not turn away from the truth now that I have seen it. Malik saved me tonight. Perhaps it was fate, forcing me to see what I had once ignored. Amara, Malik's younger sister, peeked from behind her mother's skirt. Her eyes, wide and innocent, studied Keanu with curiosity. Are you really famous? She asked quietly. Keanu smiled faintly, kneeling so his eyes met hers. Some people think so, but what matters is not fame, little one. What matters is what you do with it. Amara tilted her head, her voice soft but sharp. Then do something good with it. The words struck Keanu like lightning. Out of the mouth of a child came the challenge he could not avoid. He nodded slowly. You're right, I must. Malik's mother watched him carefully, still unsure if she could trust him, but something in his eyes and honesty. A humility softened her anger just a little. Keanu stood, looking around the small shelter room. You have carried so much. No one should suffer like this. I want to help, not with charity, but with respect. Let me try to make things right. Malik's jaw tightened. And if you can't? He asked, his voice firmer than his years. Keanu looked at him steadily. Then I will not stop trying. The boy stared at him, torn between the anger of a son who had lost his father and the quiet hope of a child who wanted to believe in second chances outside. Thunder rolled through the night sky, as if marking the beginning of something far greater than a single meeting. For the first time, two worlds stood face to face, the billionaire whose empire had unknowingly destroyed lives, and the poor boy, who had saved him, despite carrying the scars of that destruction. What came next would test not only Keanu's promises, but also Malik's faith and forgiveness. Asterisk. Promises in the dark storm outside raged louder through the night. Wind rattling the shelter windows, rain hitting the glass like restless fingers. Inside the small room, the air was just as heavy. Malik's mother stood quietly by the wall, her arms crossed, her eyes never leaving Keanu. Malik sat on the edge of his thin mattress, staring at the floor. While his sister Amara clutched a worn teddy bear against her chest, Keanu stood in the center of the room, still carrying the weight of Elena's words. His life had always been filled with cameras, interviews, and the endless rhythm of work, but this was real. The broken family before him was a mirror of the hidden cost of decisions made far away in shiny offices. Finally, Keanu broke. The silence. His voice was soft, but it carried strength. I cannot erase what happened. I cannot bring back Malik's father, but I can promise you I will not walk away. Elena's eyes narrowed. Words don't change lives. Promises don't feed children. Keanu nodded slowly. You are right, and let me show you with actions. Malik finally looked up, his young eyes sharp. Why? Why would you care now? You didn't care when. My father begged for help. Those words cut deeper than any wound. Keanu's throat tightened, but he forced himself to answer. Because I was blind. Because I trusted the wrong people. And because your bravery tonight has opened my eyes. Malik, you saved me even though you had every reason to let me fall. I cannot forget that. I will not. Fists clenched tighter. Part of him wanted to shout, to reject the kindness, to throw the pain of years into Keanu's face. But another part, quieter and hidden, longed to believe in the truth of his words. Amara broke the silence with her innocent voice. Mama, maybe. He really means it. Lena turned to her daughter, her heart torn. She wanted to protect her children from false hope, from disappointment. Yet she could see something in Keanu's face, something honest, something humble. Finally, she said, if you want to prove yourself, then don't speak to me. Speak to them. Show my children that life can still be kind. Keanu turned to Malik, his eyes steady. Tell me, what is your dream? Malik hesitated. His lips trembled before he whispered, to give my sister a better life, to make sure she never cries from hunger again. Keanu's chest ached at the words. He looked at Amara, her small hands gripping the teddy bear. "And you, Amara?" Ch smiled shyly. "I want to be a doctor. I want to help people, so no one has to die like Papa." Keanu knelt down, his voice low. "And that is what we will work toward together. I cannot fix the past, but I can help build your future." Malik studied him carefully, still unsure. But for the first time, he felt something spark inside, a flicker of hope. That night, Keanu left the shelter with his heart heavy but determined. He knew people would criticize him if he spoke about this in public. They would say he was doing it for attention, for fame. But none of that mattered. He wasn't doing it for the cameras. He was doing it for a boy who had saved him without hesitation, and for a family whose pain he could no longer ignore. As he stepped out into the storm, the rain soaking his jacket, Keanu whispered to himself, "Actions, not words. I will prove it." But deep in the shadows, far from the shelter's lights, another man watched Keanu leave. A figure who had once been tied to the company's fall, a man who had profited while families like Malik's were destroyed. His eyes narrowed as he muttered, "So Reeves wants to play the hero now? We'll see about that." Fate was not done with Malik's family yet. The road to healing was about to be filled with danger, betrayal, and choices that would test every promise Keanu had made. Shadows of betrayal following week moved quickly. Keanu kept his word. He returned to the shelter almost every evening. Sometimes he brought hot meals for everyone, sometimes books and pencils for the children, and sometimes he simply came to sit with Malik's family, listening more than he spoke at first. The other families inside the shelter stared in disbelief. They whispered among themselves, wondering why one of the richest and most famous men in the world was sitting on the floor of a broken building, laughing softly with children. But slowly, their surprise turned into gratitude. Keanu treated them not as charity cases, but as equals, as human beings worthy of dignity. Malik's walls began to crack. He had carried anger for so long, blaming Keanu for his father's death, but now he saw something different. Keanu wasn't arrogant, nor was he blind anymore, honest and determined to make things right. Still, Malik remained cautious. He had learned the world could be cruel, and promises often faded like smoke. Then, one night, the shadows returned, as Keanu left the shelter after sharing dinner with the families. A man stepped out from the darkness of the alley. He was tall, his suit too polished for such a broken neighborhood. His voice was low and sharp. "Reeves, you should stop coming here. These people don't matter." Keanu froze. His eyes narrowed. "And who are you?" The man smirked. "Someone who knows the truth." The collapse of Malik's father's company wasn't an accident. It was profit. Money for me, silence for others, and you. You were too busy playing hero on screen to notice. Anger stirred in Keanu's chest, but he kept his voice calm. "You destroyed families for profit." The man's smirk deepened. "I'll do it again." "The world doesn't reward kindness, Reeves. It rewards power." Keanu stepped closer, his eyes steady. "You're wrong. Real power is lifting people up, not crushing them. I've seen what arrogance does. I won't let it continue." The man's voice grew darker. "Walk away, Reeves, or I will ruin you just like I ruined them." Keanu said nothing more, simply turned and walked away. But inside, his resolve only grew stronger. The next day, Keanu visited Malik. He didn't tell him about the encounter, not yet. Instead, he sat with the boy on the shelter steps. "Malik," he said softly, "sometimes the world will try to scare you into silence. But courage is not about fighting with fists. It is about standing for what is right, even when it costs you." Malik looked up at him, his young face serious. "Then we stand together." Keanu smiled faintly, pride shining in his eyes. "Yes, together." But trouble was already circling. Man from the shadows had influence and money. Whispers spread that the shelter would soon lose its funding, that the building would be sold, and the families forced onto the streets. Alina wept quietly when she heard the news. "We can't survive another loss," she whispered, holding Amara close. Malik clenched his fists, anger burning in his chest. "They can't do this again. Not to us." Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder. "They can try, but this time they won't succeed." He knew this was more than helping one family now. This was about standing against the cruelty that had destroyed so many lives. And as Malik watched the determination in Keanu's eyes, for the first time he believed fully this man was not here for show. He was here to fight for them, not with fists, but with truth and kindness. But the enemy was powerful. The storm ahead would test them all. The weight of truth news spread quickly. Funding for the shelter would be cut, the land sold, and dozens of families forced into the streets once again. Fear filled the air like smoke, thick and choking. Parents held their children tighter, voices trembled, and hope felt fragile. Malik sat by the window, his fists clenched. He remembered his father's collapse, the broken promises, the cold nights of hunger. He whispered to himself, "Not again. I won't let them do this again." Keanu walked into the shelter that evening, his face calm, but his heart burning. He looked around at the families, their eyes filled with worry. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "This is not the end. They want you to believe you are powerless, but you are not. And I will not allow this place to be taken." Whispers of doubt ran through the room. "They are rich, powerful," one man muttered. "What can we do?" Keanu's voice rose, filled with conviction. "We speak, we stand, we show the world the truth." The very next day, Keanu held a press conference not for a movie, not for fame, but for the families. Standing before flashing cameras and reporters, he revealed everything. Spoke of the shelter, of the broken lives, of how greed had destroyed families like Malik's, and then with steady eyes, told the story of the boy who had saved him in the rain. "Malik risked his life for me." "Stranger," Keanu said, his voice strong, "he gave me courage when I needed it most. Now it is my turn to fight for him, for his family, and for every family forgotten by those who chase profit at the cost of people." The story spread like wildfire. Millions shared it online. Suddenly, the faceless families had names, stories, dignity. People rallied, donations poured in, and lawyers stepped forward to challenge the sale of the shelter. But the man in the shadows, the one who had threatened Keanu, did not stay silent. He tried to smear Keanu, calling him a fraud, claiming his words were just for attention. Yet the people didn't believe him. They had seen the videos, the tears of mothers, the bravery of Malik. Days later, the court ruled in favor of the shelter. The funding was restored and the land protected. Families wept with relief. Children laughed again. That evening, Keanu returned to the shelter, where dozens waited for him. Alina stood with tears in her eyes, whispering, "You gave us back our dignity." Keanu shook his head softly.
"Ow."
"Malik gave it to me first." Malik stepped forward, his voice steady, though his eyes glistened. "You kept your promise. You showed us actions, not just words." Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder. "And so did you. You saved me that night, Malik. You reminded me what it means to care. Never forget you're stronger than you know." Amara hugged Keanu's leg, her small voice bright. "One day I'll be a doctor. I'll help people too." Keanu smiled. "And I believe you will." The shelter erupted with laughter, tears, and gratitude. But amid it all, Keanu stood quietly, humbled. He had walked into their world as a stranger, tied to their pain. He left his family bound not by blood but by kindness, respect, and resilience. And as Malik looked around at his mother, his sister, and the man who had once been his enemy, he understood something powerful. Sometimes life takes everything from you, only to return it in a way you never imagined. Because kindness, even in the smallest act, can change the course of everything.